everyone. Today we're going to be in Chapter 11, which deals with compensation and pay. So today we're going to be taking a look for the next 2 days at Chapter 11, and then we're going to take a look at a controversial issue in Chapter 12 as we consider executive pay. But let's go ahead and take a look at some of the fundamentals today of compensation and total rewards packages. Well, welcome back, everybody, and today we're going to be looking into total rewards and compensation, which takes us now to Chapter 11. Now, what is the nature of total rewards and compensation? Well, total rewards, it's the monetary and non-monetary rewards provided by companies to attract, motivate, and retain employees. So when we talk about total rewards, we're talking about pay, we're talking about benefits, tangible and intangible rewards that the company has to offer an individual if they come and work for them. Now, strategic decisions can guide the design of compensation practices, and we're going to take a look a little bit later on at some of the strategies that companies incorporate when it comes to total rewards. You have to, though, be in compliance with all applicable laws and regulations. And there are several out there that we have to be mindful of that specifically deal with how we pay them, how much we pay them, who we pay, and so forth. But it also has to deal with the cost effectiveness of the organization. And another element that we have to consider too is the internal and external equity for employees. And we're going to be looking at equity theory here in just a few moments. Now, I'm going to go ahead and put these out. There needs to be an optimal mix of compensation components. Now, if you remember, I just mentioned that a total reward system will involve tangible and intangible, direct and indirect rewards. So there needs to be a good mix of all types of rewards for that individual. So one can't offset the other. Performance enhancement for the organization, and that's what a good compensation package or total rewards compensation package will provide. And then you have performance recognition and talent management for employees. So what we can do for our employees to let them know that we recognize their performance and prepare them for positions of higher authority is in this area, is the compensation and rewards package. And then you have enhanced recruitment, involvement, and retention of employees. And money will attract people, but so too will benefits, and so too will perks and recognition and so forth. So it's more than just the financial aspect of it that makes a total rewards and compensation package so effective. It's that, again, that optimal mix. Now, Figure 11.1 just gives you a percentage of the distribution of rewards. Here you see the direct or tangible rewards. This is money, pretty much, and financial things. Tangible, indirect could be maybe benefits and so forth, and we're going to look at that here in just a minute. Intangible is satisfaction, environment, promotions, and so forth. So we'll take a look at what they're talking about here as we see that tangible rewards. You have base pay, you have variable pay, which are bonuses, equity awards, incentives. You also have here with indirect tangible rewards, as I said earlier, you have benefits. You also have paid time off. And then you have from there disability benefits if you were hurt or laid off. A lot of employees, when they are undergoing surgery and they have some type of health issue, disability comes into play very prominently. And then you have the intangible rewards, which is a supportive work environment, challenging work, autonomy, positive reinforcement. Now, I have polled students in the past, and I've asked them, if you could go to a company, which one would you choose between two companies? A company that paid very well, but the work environment was not very positive. People were fighting, and you were not very happy there, the work-wise. Or if you had the opportunity to go to a company that had a great work environment, you loved going to work, you were recognized, supported, and so forth, but yet you couldn't make as much there as you could at the other company. Which would you prefer? Would you prefer money, or would you prefer work life? And many of them told me they would forego some of the money if they could have a positive work environment. And I know many students today, and many people in my personal relationships, talk to people who are looking for other employment because the work environment was awful. Very few times have I seen them complain or heard people complain about the money. Many of them will forego some of the money just to be able to have a positive work environment. So work environment, those intangible rewards are very important today. Now, let me go ahead and put all of this out. This is just an explanation of those. A tangible reward, it can be quantitatively measured and compared between organizations such as wages and money. Intangible rewards are those that can't be readily identified or measured. Base pay is the basic compensation that you received, and it's oftentimes for non-exempt people in the form of an hourly wage, or for exempt, it could be salary. Wages are payments calculated directly from the basis of time worked by employees. So if you work hourly, you get paid by the hour. And then salary, you get paid each period regardless of the numbers of hours worked. And that's what I've mainly been working as most of my adult life, as salary. Variable pay, it's compensation linked directly to individual, team, or organizational performance. And usually if you may do sales work and get commissions and so forth. So that may be an example of variable pay. And benefit, that's the indirect reward given to an employee as a part of the membership of the organization. So, and benefits are very important as well. I know there are some companies in Memphis that have great benefits, and oftentimes the employee will forego some of the pay just because of the good benefits. And I have seen people work solely for the benefits. The spouse will work for money, and the other will work for the benefits. So all of these are components that go into compensation. Now, you have some laws governing compensation. You have the Fair Labor Standards Act, which governs minimum wage, child labor, exempt and non-exempt status, and overtime pay. So let's take a look at these in a little bit more detail. Now, the Fair Labor Standards Act, it's primarily it's a federal law affecting compensation, which is enforced by the Wage and Hour Division of the Department of Labor. And it focuses on these areas: minimum wage. Everybody has to be paid a minimum amount of money to work today. And it also provides limits on the use of child labor. And then overtime provision. Whether you're exempt or non-exempt will determine how that law is read. Now let's go in detail with the components of the FLSA. Minimum wage is to be paid to a broad spectrum of covered employees. It's a congressional action, and it's the only way to change it through Congress. And whatever the minimum wage is set by Congress today, that's what it is. Today you're seeing people argue for a higher minimum wage. In jobs that are primarily unskilled, there's not a lot of preparation personally. KSAOs, which is the knowledge, skills, abilities, and other attributes that are demanding for people to be able to work in these jobs, but yet they're wanting a very high minimum wage. And when you deal with compensation, you have to realize that companies are in business to make money. They're not going to lose money. And oftentimes when you see what's going on today, especially with technology, and if you remember, I told you the three components that have revolutionized business today involve technology, diversity, and globalization. Well, today, if you go into a Kroger or a Walmart or other shops, you'll see the self-checkout lines. And essentially what's happening little by little is technology is taking over the workplace. So especially for these non-skilled or unskilled labor positions, McDonald's is in the process of buying a company that makes automated kiosks for drive-through windows. So here in the near future, when you go through the drive-through at McDonald's, you probably won't be talking to a human. You'll be going through the kiosk and ordering everything and getting your meals that way. Now that's taking out the human element. Now here's what's going to happen, and we've already seen this. You have society today saying, oh, it's not fair for you to pay someone the minimum wage as it stands now. We need to double it and triple it so that they can live a life that's comparable to those that have a skill or have a college education and so forth. So just because I want extra money, the company should pay me extra money. Well, Target has done that. They raised the minimum wage to $15, but in doing so, they cut in half the hours of the employees. So the employees, in their efforts to get more money, have really cut off their nose to spite their face, because now with the pay raise, the company Target cannot pay everybody working a full 8-hour shift per day that amount of money. So their answer, we'll go ahead and pay you $15, but we're going to cut your hours. So employees today and society is really not thinking very strategically and using common sense. One of the employers has made it very clear, and I can't remember if it was McDonald's or some restaurant chain, he said that there is no way that he is going to pay a employee $15, $20 an hour for the unskilled labor that they give. He would rather invest $35,000 on a kiosk that can do the work of an unskilled employee. He does not have to worry about benefits. He does not have to worry about the person showing up on time. He doesn't have to worry about substandard service and quality and so forth. All of those things are eliminated because of technology. So my argument and what I try to teach when I teach compensation is that in our efforts now to want more for nothing, we're really just talking ourselves out of work. Again, Kroger, Walmart, these companies are already integrating technology to get gas. I can't tell you the last time I went in and paid for gas. Everything is there at the pump. So that's going to be the wave of the future. But when you talk about minimum wage, that's what you're looking at, having a minimum amount of money that you pay the employee per hour. Now, child provisions. The FLSA has set the minimum employment age at 16 years old. Now, for hazardous occupations, you have to be 18 years old. And individuals 14 to 15 years old may work outside school hours with certain limitations. So You can work as early as 14 years old, but it cannot interfere with school, and it also has other limitations. You're not able to work certain types of positions and jobs and so forth. When I was 16, I had a work permit, and I was able to go work in a grocery store. It was after school, and it was not hazardous or anything that posed a danger to me, so I was able to do that. Now, exempt employees are essentially those who are not paid overtime. I'm an exempt employee. It makes no difference how many hours I work. I'm not going to get paid any more than what I'm getting paid on a regular schedule. Non-exempt employees are those who must be paid overtime. And here's the overtime requirement: 1.5 times the regular pay rate for all hours worked over 40 hours in a week. So if you work over 40 hours a week, as soon as you go over 40 hours, if you are a wage earner, then you should be getting paid 1.5 times the regular pay. Now, Figure 11.3 just looks at determining exempt status under FLSA. You have the different categories. You have executive level, administrative level, professional level, computer industries, outside sales, and so forth. And these are the criteria. So when you're taking a look at who is covered and what are the conditions or the criteria, Figure 11.3 will just point that out to give you kind of a thumbnail sketch of who and what's being paid out. Now, there are additional laws affecting compensation. You have the prevailing wage, which is an hourly wage determined by a formula that considers the rate paid for a job by the majority of the employers in the appropriate geographic area. Now, people in Memphis, Tennessee are not going to be paid the same as people in California. Why? Well, cost of living. And someone in maybe Shreveport, Louisiana is not going to be paid the same as someone in New England or New York because of the difference in cost of living differentials. So the prevailing wage is the average wage for that area. Now, garnishment is the court directing an employer to set aside a portion of an employee's wage to a debt owed to a creditor. You might not be aware of this or not, but some who are behind in paying their bills, the company can call your employer, and the court can garnish your check as a result of you not paying. So make sure you're paying your bills because the court can step in and really take that money from your bank, and you don't have a say-so in it. Within the organizational climate, there are strategic decisions that you have to make, and it really goes from the philosophy that you have when it comes in the way that you believe compensation should be. There's an entitlement philosophy, and that assumes that individuals who have worked another year with the company are entitled to pay increases with little regard for performance differences. Now, in the past, we've had what's called merit pay, MERIT. Now, merit pay is a schedule, or it's a compensation system that gives you incremental increases. If you are there for 4 years and you keep your nose clean, you're good, you're there and you don't cause trouble or get fired, they may have a schedule to pay you every 5 years, incremental increases. Some companies do it every year. Every year you get a raise. So merit pay, or this entitlement philosophy, is as long as I stay in the company, and not do anything adverse, then I'm going to get a raise as long as I just toe the line. Well, that really hurts productivity, because as long as you're there and doing your job, you're going to get paid, but it doesn't give you any incentive to do more, to be more productive or be more efficient or effective. As long as you do the bare minimum, you're going to get a raise. So what incentive then is there for someone to do more, to be more motivated, which is what we need today with all of the competition that's out there? Well, there is no incentive. So people on merit systems usually just hold down the fort. They do just what is expected and nothing more, and they ride out their years just taking the incremental increases. Now, pay for performance is another philosophy that says compensation decisions should be made on your performance, and that just makes sense. It's amazing to me why many companies today have not adopted that, where you are going to be judged not on the longevity of your service, but the quality of your service. Are you putting out? Are you maximizing and increasing the company's profits? And if so, you get paid. You get raises. If not, then why should the company pay you just for doing the bare minimum? So there are arguments for and against, but entitlement is more of a merit system where as long as you stay in the company, you're going to get a raise. Pay for performance, you're going to have to perform and earn your raises. Now, Figure 11.5 just gives a comparison on this. Pay and raise based on length of service, whereas performance, pay and raises based on performance. Across the board raises, everybody, as long as you are in the company, you get a raise. But here, no raises for poor performing employees. You have usually an annual adjustment, and here there are no annual. It's the market adjusted pay scale. Industry comparisons of pay only, and then you have no raise for length of service or job, and industry comparisons of total rewards are there. And holiday bonuses given to all employees, you earn your bonuses and so forth. So there's a distinct difference now between entitlement and performance, and where the industry, let's say for instance, and this is another issue that you need to look at when it comes to entitlement and performance. Federal Express may be paying $20 an hour and give incremental annual raises. UPS may not be able to pay that because of a bad economy or from a bad year or whatever. So that's going to affect the worker morale. If they're making $15 an hour and they're looking at FedEx employees who are making $25 an hour, that's where they're looking at the disparity. So with performance, you get a raise based on the amount of work that you do. So I don't have to pay everybody, so I can afford to pay more if I'm paying less or paying out to less constituents or employees. Now with strategic compensation decisions, again, communicating the pay philosophy. You need to let the employee know the value of the total rewards package. And folks, that's key. People really only look at salary, or they look at wages. Well, I'm only making $10 an hour. But when you take into consideration how much the company is paying for your benefits, how much they pay for vacation time, how much they pay for all of the tangible and intangible rewards you're getting, you make a whole lot more than $10. But oftentimes, all we do is tell people the job pays, $10 an hour and that's it. And that's not enough to let them know. You need to educate the worker on how much really they are making and how good they do have it. It may not be, in their estimation, everything they want, but when you take a look at everything they are getting and compare it to how much they would have to pay if it was out of pocket, they gain a whole new appreciation for it. Now, there are compensation responsibilities. Usually the specialists in HR and managers, they administer the compensation programs. I teach a graduate program in compensation, and there are specialists in that field, and there are a wide variety of issues that you have to deal with just in compensation alone. But HR develops and administers the compensation system, and HR ensures pay practices comply with all legal requirements. So you are the one HR specialist who are manager or generalist who will do the development, the administration, and the compliance of compensation systems. Line managers will evaluate the employee performance and participate in pay decisions. They help you in the decision-making process, but overall you have that responsibility for developing, maintaining, and complying with a comprehensive compensation system, total reward system that is just, fair, motivating, and legal. Now, Figure 11.6, these are the metrics for compensation. For instance, the average hourly rate, you would add the individual hourly rates of pay for all employees and divide it by the number of employees. And then you have number of full-time equivalents, FTE, average tenure. So these are just some of the formulas here that you can utilize as you develop metrics for your compensation system. And I'll let you guys take a look at that. It's fairly straightforward, really doesn't need embellishing. Now, some of the theories that apply to compensation and total reward systems. First of all, you have expectancy theory. Expectancy theory really is, it basically says before I do anything, I'm going to evaluate what's being asked of me. Can I do it? And is the effort worth the payoff? And really, when you think about it, that's how you live your life. Before you do anything, you're going to evaluate the payoff as opposed to the effort for the payoff. But expectancy theory is the employee's motivation that's based on the probability that his or her efforts will lead to an expected level of performance that is linked to a valued reward. And rewards that are not appreciated by the employee have little value to motivate. So to give you an example, I had a student who worked for UPS. He was a driver, and he had over the years developed a friendship with several of the drivers. They would go after their route in the afternoon when it was quitting time. They would go and go to the bowling alley and hang out, or go to their houses and hang out, and just they had a close friendship. This particular employee, which was my student, was promoted to supervisor, and they offered him a nice raise with the benefits that go along with it. And he had different work hours. He had an office. I mean, he was elevated to a new level. And he said within 3 months, I told him that you either move me back down to driver or I'm quitting. Now, the problem wasn't the money or the office or the hours. He loved all of that. The problem was that his friends looked at him differently. He was no longer just good old Joe, our buddy. He was now in management. He was in a supervisory level. And so he was viewed differently, and the relationship changed. So the amount of effort and expectation for that position was not worth him losing those relationships. So he was demotivated. And as a result, he was moved back down. And that's how we are in life. I mean, think about what you're doing right now in school. You have a relative confidence in your ability to get your degree. So you are going to work for that degree, and then you have an expectation of getting that degree after you've fulfilled all the requirements. And in your estimation, that degree is worth the amount of effort that you're putting in. So you are motivated to do that. And even through adversity, even through times when you're not wanting to go to school, you're still going to do it because the payoff is worth the effort. Now, whether you are going to college, whether you are working in a position in an organization, whether you are looking at relationships, it can be used personally too, you are not going to do anything before you evaluate your ability to accomplish whatever it is you're wanting to accomplish. The relative expectation or reliability that payoff is going to come once you've fulfilled all of the obligations, and that payoff is going to be worth more than the effort expended. So that really is expectancy theory in a nutshell. Now, figure 11.7 gives you a visual depiction of it. You have the expectancy, and that's the likelihood that if you invest your time, you will engage in it. Instrumentality, that the accomplishment will actually lead to the reward. And then valence, that's the value, that the reward is greater than the effort. So I'm going to place a high value on this endeavor. Now, equity theory, in my estimation, is probably one of the most important aspects of compensation and theories. Equity theory, the definition, individual judges fairness or equity in compensation by comparing their inputs and outputs against the inputs and outcomes of referent others. Referent others are the others that are working around you. So in other words, what they're saying is that everybody's watching everybody else. Now let's say, for instance, you're on an assembly line and someone is working right next to you. You have the same job, you do the same thing, but you find out that so-and-so is making $1 an hour more than you. Well, that's going to upset you because as you see it, you should be getting paid the same as that person. Now, the key to it all is your perception. Now, that's something that they don't list here, but it is a very important consideration. All it takes for me to believe that there is inequity is that I perceive there to be inequity. Now, let's say, for instance, that person who's making $1 more than me or you. What if they come to the company with 10 more years of experience than you? Or they have other KSAOs that are valuable to the organization? Or they can provide something more or different, or they have an education higher than you. All of these variables could very well go into that $1 more an hour raise or pay difference, but it doesn't make a difference to the one who is perceiving inequity. I'm not going to look at all of that. All I know at this time is that you're making $1 more than me. So transparency is important, but when it comes to, and this is why people tell you in organizations, don't talk about salaries, don't talk about money, don't tell others what you make, and vice versa. And this is why, because of equity theory. It makes no difference if the pay differentials or the reward differentials or the compensation differentials are justified. The only thing that matters is that I perceive there to be a inequity there. And then if someone sees, or let's say, for instance, let me backtrack. Let's say, for instance, I see you getting $1 more and I perceive that it's not fair, what's that going to do to me? I'm going to be demotivated. I'm going to say, well, why am I working as hard as so-and-so when so-and-so is getting paid $1 more? So I'm going to decrease my productivity. Well, now what about maybe another person watching me who's doing the same job? Well, if Dr. Marshall is making as much as me, but look at him, he's not working as hard as me, why should I work as hard as him? So you can see a domino effect taking place. And again, this is why the talking about compensation and rewards packages and all of that come into play. Now, Figure 11.8 gives you the formula for it, the employee inputs to outputs versus the referent other input to output. If I believe that my input is greater than the other person's input for the amount of outcomes that I have or I'm getting, then I'm going to be demotivated. So, and these are some of the inputs and outcomes that you see here that would be a factor in equity theory. Now, there's two components of fairness and equity that I want to really drive home to you. And it's right here, procedural justice and distributive justice. Most of the lawsuits that are out there now, as far as civil rights violations, discrimination charges, deal with these two issues, procedural justice and distributive justice. Procedural justice deals with the fairness of the requirements to be compensated. For instance, if I'm going to give a bonus out, let's say, for instance, I'm going to offer a $500 bonus for anybody in the company who has a 20% increase in productivity for the month of November, then the procedures should be the same for everybody in that organization. You need to have X amount of output. You need to go by this rule, and this rule, and follow the procedures or follow the guidelines that we give out for you to be able to receive that reward if you accomplish everything we ask you to do. Distributive justice deals with the fairness in how these rewards or bonuses or whatever is handed out. If, let's say, for instance, Jim and Mary are working and they both do the same procedures and both of them get those objectives met, I'm not able to pay Jim the $500 bonus and then pay Mary maybe $200 because Mary is single and she doesn't need that much money, and Jim is married, so he would need the full amount. So that's kind of a silly analogy, but we do it all the time. Distributive justice means that I am giving out rewards fairly to everybody based on a procedure that is fair to everybody as well. And another example may be promotions. I wasn't promoted because I'm a woman. And if you did everything that a man has done and you have climbed up the ladder and you've worked this, that, and the other, and you followed the same procedures that a man has followed, you may not be given the promotion because you are a woman, and there's still biases and stereotypes, according to many people today, that have a glass ceiling on women, especially being in executive positions. So that would be another example of distributive justice. You just need to know that the violation of these is an illegal action, and they can take punitive action against you, legal action against you for violating it. Now, I said at the very beginning that there are different strategies for compensation. Lag the market strategy is used when the economy is fairly bad. You have an abundance of workers who are looking for work, and you may or may not be experiencing financial difficulties, so you can pay really a lower or under the average compensation reward or strategy based on that. For instance, the job, let's say for instance, a job usually pays $15 an hour, but people are desperate for work, so you may tell them, okay, well, I'll pay $13 an hour. Why? Because you can. There's nothing illegal about it other than making sure that you meet the minimum wage standard, but that's lag the market strategy. Lead the market strategy is where you come out and you give more than the average, and that's used to be able to attract the best and the brightest in that particular field. Yes, they're more expensive, but you get better quality coming in or attracting better quality than you would by just giving under the margin or under the median salary. And then match the market. You're just paying what the market will bear, whatever the average. If everybody's paying $10 an hour, then that's what we're offering. And that's usually the norm for businesses today. Competency-based pay pays you based on your abilities and so forth. It's not really pay for performance. They're paying you for your capabilities. For instance, I'm getting paid for all of my degrees. So my education in the education field is sought after. So I get paid accordingly. If you are a computer programmer and that skill is unique and there's not a lot of people there, you in that field, you might be able to command a higher price for compensation. I tell my students in my classes that where we meet, actually brick and mortar classes, my wife is halfway through a program for court reporters. It's a 2-year degree program, and you would think, well, it's a professional certification. Well, it's actually a degree, but 2 years, they may not make that much. Well, today there are some states that have mandated the minimum salary for a court reporter is at $90,000. It's not uncommon for them to make $200,000-$300,000. Why? Because very few people are doing it now. Many people don't even think about going into court reporting. The ones who are currently in there are going to be retiring within the next several years, and they're projecting a 5,000 person shortage in just that one field alone. So she is going into a field that's virtually non-existent now, but they always have to have court reporters. And once she gets that competency, they're going to pay her well, maybe enough to where I can sit on the porch and wave goodbye to her as she goes to work every morning. Who knows? But competency-based pay pays you based on your KSAOs, especially if they are hard to get. And then compensation systems design. And really you have team and individual, how to develop compensation programs that support the team concept, and then individual. We're an individualistic society. It's all about the employee of the month, employee recognition, employee bonus. Today we're trying to evolve into a more collectivist perspective where we pay teams for performance and so forth, and that encourages collaboration. It encourages more getting together and forming collective units that serve to better enhance the organization's efficiency and so forth. So that's the difference between team and individual. Individual, it's about one person. With team, it's all about the team and how they perform. Well, that's going to do it for today. We'll finish up chapter 11 tomorrow. Well, today we took a look at some of the fundamentals of compensation, especially how we should reward people and some of the challenges really that we have in being able to compensate individuals. Today we live in a world that's wanting more money for the effort that they produce, and oftentimes the production isn't worth the money that they're asking for. So we need to be able to make sure what's equitable and what is fair and what is legal. So today we took a look at some of those issues. Tomorrow we're going to go a little bit more in depth. So until then, have a good day, and we will continue on tomorrow as we take a look at compensation and total rewards.